Going to the underworld must be like this perilous journey. I wonder if there's any special gear or a special outfit or something like that we need in order to make the journey. I guess it could be called underwear. We often hear vague tales of the Viking afterlife. Most popular among them is Valhalla, or Valholl, the Hall of Odin himself, where warriors are invited to drink and celebrate and then go into the fields and fight and murder each other until they wake up the following day and just do it all again. Drinking to their valiant fights past and future, or Freya's lesser known but far more intense Folkvanger, which is simply an everlasting killing field overseen by Freya, one of Norse mythology's many death gods. Norse literature is riddled with references to the land of the dead and the men who go there, but often we do not glimpse into the world of the dead itself in these stories. We merely hear of their journey. Of, for example, an old man getting into a boat and rowing out to sea, destined to never return as he is headed to Helheim. I want to discuss two instances in which we see a brief glimpse into this land of the dead from a human perspective. First we have his Hadding. And now, Hadding was, according to legend, among the first kings of Daneland. Saxo Grammaticus, who's a bishop, records his life as one just wrought with spiritual events. Among these stories is one where he finds himself in a romantic relationship with a Jotun, who protects him against other Jotun on his adventures until the Jotun finally come after her in a night of revenge for her betrayal. She sees to Hadding's safety and then turns to fight the Jotun, enlarging herself into a giant in a final stand. The Jotun, however, outnumber her and rip her apart. Hadding, lost and alone, finds himself guided and protected by Odin through other adventures in his life. And he finds himself protected by the father of his lost Jotun love, who appears next to him in a conflict, wielding a crooked sword, and he stays there long enough to distract his opponent, giving Hadding time to kill his adversary with a spear. Hadding's close relationship with the Jotun is a boon to those modern heathens who wish to justify their relationships with the darker gods. Though it's important to note that Hadding's life was plagued with tragedy. As he would try to seek refuge, tragedy would follow him. After losing a battle, he left with his fleet, only to be caught in a storm, and once shipwrecked, Hadding found himself in a shelter, in a home which collapsed upon him. There's no mystery as to why someone who had this background would be one that is invited so briefly to see the land of the dead, Helheim, and that he was allowed to step foot there, or at least nearby. Through dark clouds they went, and down a path worn away by long ages of travelers. They passed by people in rich robes and nobles dressed in lavish purple, and then they passed green fields, likely the place where the woman had obtained her herbs. And they came across a river flowing with blackish blue water with a bridge. And in crossing the bridge, Hadding noticed that the river was swirling with various kinds of weapons. When they reached the other side, they saw two evenly matched armies clashing into each other, and the woman told Hadding that they were those who had died by the sword, caught in an everlasting battle, trying to match their former achievements. They continued walking until they came to some great walls. The old woman tries to jump over it, but obviously to no avail. She instead takes a rooster and rips off its head, killing it. She then flings the body over the wall, and the bird, immediately resurrected, testifies to its life by giving a loud crow on the other side. And then Hadding was home. There are several interpretations of what he saw, the most obvious of which is that the armies fighting each other is Valholl, a place that is more of a curse than a reward, where you spend eternity attempting to recapture the prowess of your life, which is impossible in death. Same for the men in robes, who seem overly attached to their material wealth and their robes that represent it, and therefore cannot gain access to the afterlife. But these are just ideas. We don't even know what sources Saxo was pulling from in order to tell these stories. And it's possible that Saxo just combined elements of classical sources with dramatic stories in order to correct it. It's important to keep in mind that when reading these kind of sources, that people like Saxo were not seeking to preserve every honest element of the local faith in writing these documents. Instead, they were writing histories, and their personal opinions are scattered throughout these writings, making it hard to judge whether or not what you're reading is the honest lore of the Danes, or if Saxo was belittling existing stories, as he sometimes does in the record. It really is, honestly, very Christian of him. Nevertheless, it's what we have, and in this case, it's all that we have. And it follows the general trend that seems to be mentioned in the Eddic sources and other sagas, that the journey to Helheim is long, and not necessarily easy. Hadding, however, only saw the journey, and his journey into the underworld didn't quite visit the afterlife. He only went to its walls. But what's on the other side of those gates? Presumably a land without death, and likely evergreen. But that's all that we can gather, and the rest is obscured. One man potentially saw what might be on the other side. Helheim was rumored to have many entrances, and many paths to get there. And a man named Thorstein Codbiter, who at 25 was a strong fisherman with a weathered appearance, had just received an inheritance and won a hard-fought struggle with another family. After the dispute was settled by a mutual ally, his life resumed to normal, and he set out to sail with his crew in his fishing ship to build a future for his family. And while he was gone, his wife even bore a child. But one night, while Thorstein was gone at sea, one of Thorstein's shepherds was tending the flock near the mountain sacred to the family. The shepherd saw the mountain open up with a warm firelight and could hear the clamoring of voices and drinking horns within. He crept closer and saw Thorstein and his crew being greeted and welcomed by Thorstein's father, long since dead. He bade Thorstein take the high seat with him. The shepherd told Thorstein's wife of this vision. She remained quiet, not wanting to express what she knew that it meant. But the next day it was revealed that Thorstein and others had been injured and drowned at the expedition. What's interesting about this source is that it's written by a Christian who discusses the conversion of Iceland to Christianity, but Thorstein is definitely a character prior to that. So in this record, a Christian discusses a pagan who dies at sea and then goes to the pagan afterlife. Now, whether the story is true or not, the interesting part here is that the author honors his traditions and gives us a record of understanding of what the Norse believed the afterlife was like. That, I think, is the moment that we can take from this record. Despite the differences between Christians and pagans, this moment was preserved in history. So what can we say of the heathen afterlife? From these records, we really can't say all that much. We can say that it seems to be a land without death, of celebration and love, a land where you are reunited with your ancestors, and a land that is forever green. It is a land at the end of a long and difficult road. Some may make it, some may not. But getting there seems to depend far more on who you are and the fortitude of your character rather than what you specifically believe. And with that, hail to my patrons for making this content possible. It's good to have people at your back. Hit the subscribe button, smack that bell into the afterlife, and remember to find a way or make one.